thank you. If it weren't for YouTube, I would have started out saying I'm Ben Fong-Torres and I'm a masturbator. So I won't say that. I am, however, from... Hello there. I am from overseas. I bring a foreign perspective to tonight's proceedings. I was born in Alameda. But I did not know, hey, there's this whole other side of the room here. Look at this. Hi. Hi. How are you? Giants. Woo. When I came to San Francisco to go to school and live in 1965, just in time for me to be able to write about what I was writing about, the scene in San Francisco. And Jody asked for, or said, or promised you on his website, views of the world today. Well, I don't have any of those, but we do learn from history, if we're lucky. And so I have some history here. And he mentioned the Grateful Dead, and in the God of the Vita, I will read about the dead. This is a section from one of my compilations of stuff from Rolling Stone magazine. Whenever a rock musician of note passes away, my phone begins to do whatever phones do these days when someone calls. Actually, I have a ringtone from the good, the bad, and the ugly. Anyway, the media calls for comments, sound bites, or some writing. That was the case when Jerry Garcia died on August 9, 1995. Hard to believe. The next day, the top editor at People called. The magazine was putting together a special issue on Garcia and wanted me to handle his life story. I would have 1 week to complete it. Later that day, Rolling Stone called, asking for a 1,000-word report from San Francisco about the Grateful Dead's special connections to the city and the 60s. Could I submit that in 5 days? So I did, and I did. And here's what I gave to Rolling Stone. When in the mid-60s, San Francisco came to represent Nothing Left to Lose, there was a handful of identifiable pioneers that changed the face, the sound, and the style of pop culture. The changers included the concert promoters Bill Graham and Chet Helms, poster and light show artists, hosts and alchemists like Ken Kesey and Augustus Owsley Stanley, radio pioneer Tom Donahue, jazz critic Ralph J. Gleason, and yes, Rolling Stone. At the epicenter were the musicians. Early on, the Grateful Dead, along with a few others, played free concerts as often as paying gigs. Extending their songs into jazz-like improvisatory jams, they broke down the lines between artist and audience. Back then, we, the Rolling Stone and the Grateful Dead, were brothers in arms. The Dead did it on stage. We watched and listened, reported, ranted, and raved. For our very first issue in November 1967, we looked into a story for the ages. The Grateful Dead getting busted at their Haight-Ashbury digs. The police had it up to their badges with freaks flaunting various laws. Inviting local media along for the roust, they barged into the house at 710 Ashbury Street, where most of the dead and their old ladies lived, and arrested 2 band members and 9 associates and friends on dope charges. Jerry Garcia wasn't one of them. He was out at the time. Photographer Baron Woolman snapped shots of Bob Weir walking down the front steps, cuffed to Phil Lesh's girlfriend, and Ron Pigpen McKernan and Lesh outside their bail bondsman's office across from the Hall of Justice. The next day, after a festive press conference at the House, Woolman shot photographs of a band of unrepentant freaks, now joined by Garcia, posing in front of 710 with Pigpen brandishing a rifle. The photos took up most of a 2-page spread. The lead by Jan Weiner was textbook hook'em news writing. "That's what you get for dealing the killer weed," laughed the state narcotics agent Jerry Van Ram at the 11 members of the Grateful Dead household he and his agents had rounded up into the Dead's kitchen. Oh, Jan wrote long sentences. The band and... We're edit here. On YouTube. The band and the magazine always had a special relationship, despite the occasional negative album review or report on an unpleasant incident. Well, Rolling Stones moved to New York in 1977. Our common roots transcended trivia. Our love of great music kept us bonded. One day in early 1970, we got an impromptu visit from the management and various members of the Dead. The band had just wrapped up recording Working Man's Dead. They knew the album was something special and wanted to share it right away. Magazine staffers gathered in the only sizable office, Jan's of course, and listened in awe to pedal steel licks and tight, pretty country harmonies from the Dead, on Uncle John's Band, on Dire Wolf and Casey Jones. Our minds, as someone would later say, were young and blown. In later years, I had occasion to interview Garcia. Every 5 years, it seemed, there would be an anniversary of some sort, and the Dead were always there. And Garcia was always there, always present for you. Even his most offhand remarks rang true, like the best of Robert Hunter's lyrics. In November 1975, and we were preparing a special issue on the 10th anniversary of the San Francisco scene, Garcia greeted some scruffy press at a recording studio in an alley off Market Street, and I asked him about the warping of time. It seems like hundreds of years, he said, and it also seems like not too much time at all. I don't know, time, you know. Some things haven't changed at all, really, and the world has changed. Perhaps not enough, but in his own quiet, unassuming, different beat way, Jerry Garcia did his best to change it, or at least to loosen it up a little. In his successes, in his failures, and in the way he addressed them both, with candor, humility, and beatific good humor, he was quintessentially San Franciscan. The Grateful Dead were at the vanguard of the San Francisco scene, the summer of love, the 60s. But of all the bands, it was the Dead that remained intact, more than less, and carried the San Francisco banner for 3 decades. Sure, they moved out of the Haight-Ashbury after that bust in the fall of '67, fanning out to Marin County to the north. But they were forever tied to San Francisco and the 60s, and they never resisted or disavowed those bonds. It wasn't just that the Dead were born in the city, it was that the city was reborn with the Dead. And in the spirit of a restless town in restless times, the Dead rode on, breaking and making up rules as they went, eschewing recordings as a stepping stone to riches, and relying instead on concert tours. But they always punctuated their schedule with New Year's Eve concerts in Oakland or San Francisco, year-end runs that took Bay Area Deadheads to Mardi Gras, Halloween, Chinese New Year, and the acid test all at once. Jerry was a true San Franciscan, says his wife, Deborah Coons Garcia, by way of explaining why any memorial event, any celebration of his life, would have to be in San Francisco. And so it was. In the polo field of Golden Gate Park, where the Dead played the Human Being in 1967, and most recently, the memorial concert for Bill Graham in 1991. This time, the Dead's music was on tape, and the band members were there to address the crowd. Bob Weir, his arms raised to the heavens, said that Garcia, quote, filled this world full of clouds of joy. Just take a little bit of that and reflect it back up to him. And he did. 50,000 arms lifted to the sky, holding imaginary mirrors and sending a bit of San Francisco to wherever he might be. Thank you.